In light of the discussions prompted by the findings of the Chilcot Review surrounding whether the decision to go to war should be made in the Parliament rather than by members of Cabinet, I'd like to know how the Senate would deal with a decision of this calibre, particularly when you consider the number of independents and minor parties that will represent Victorians.
George Brandis.
Well, in relation to the Chilcot report, remember the Chilcot report was a report on the circumstances in which the United Kingdom Cabinet made the decision to go to war. It had nothing to say about the circumstances in which Australia made the same decision.
It had a good deal, George, it did have a good deal to say about Prime Minister Howard and his behind-the-scenes activities.
I was going to come to that.
With two of the great leaders of that time,
I was going to come
George W. Bush and Tony Blair.
I was going to come to that. But what the Chilcot report found was that the decision to go to war was based on flawed intelligence. Now, in his interview with you on Late Line a couple of nights ago, I think, and John Howard, you questioned him very closely about this, and I thought his explanation as to the reasons for the Australian decision were very thorough and very compelling. The fact is that it was the advice of the intelligence community that weapons of mass destruction existed. That was the advice of American intelligence, it was the advice of British intelligence.
So rather than repeat this, which John Howard has said quite a lot during the course of let's concentrate on the question, which is actually about whether there should be a vote in Parliament, indeed I imagine a joint sitting, since the Senate would probably be involved in this, in order to take us to war in the future.
Well, that is not something that our system has ever acknowledged. It's not. It hasn't been part of the Westminster tradition. And it's not something that I would favour, because quite often these decisions have to be made on the basis of material that can't be put into the public arena for understandable reasons. But
so were you surprised when the Army General who sat in on the meetings that led us to the war, the former Chief of the Army General Peter Lay, said the decision should be taken by Parliament?
Well, that's his opinion on a political question. But the point...
it's actually a matter of principle he's talking about.
Well, OK, but it may be a matter of principle, but it's still a political question as to where, in what part of the institutions of government, that decision should lie. But the point I make to you is that when decision makers are confronted with the concluded view of intelligence specialists based on what is said to be clear empirical evidence, then I think they would be irresponsible if they didn't take that advice very seriously.
Yeah, but why not, if you're so convinced of it, take it to the Parliament and have a vote?
Because depending on the circumstances, it may include material that is not able to be put into the public arena. And as well, the executive government in the Westminster system, the executive government has always been that organ of our constitution that takes the ultimate responsibility for decisions to go to war.
All right. Now, Tanya Plibersek, does the Labor Party have a different position on this question of whether the Parliament should vote on going to war?
Let me talk about it in two parts. The first, I always surprise myself when I hear me saying this, but I agree with George in one respect. You actually, at times there will be highly classified information that should not be in the public domain for reasons like protecting the sources that the information's come from. So I don't think that a parliamentary vote is the way to proceed, but I think a parliamentary discussion about these decisions is very important. And for example, Labor was opposed to 2003, the invasion then. There was plenty of people at the time saying that the intelligence was flawed. There were many people saying that the weapons inspectors should have been given more time to complete their work. There were many people saying that a resolution of the UN Security Council would be necessary to make the invasion legal. Those things should have been debated in our Parliament. They should have been debated. They were strongly put views at the time. Can I...
if you can do it briefly, because I've got another question on this subject.
Well, the Chilcot report goes to all of these things. This is what we said at the time. This is I drafted a letter that we gave to Condoleezza Rice on the floor of the Parliament when George Bush was visiting Australia. And these reasons that were explored in the Chilcot report are the reasons that Labor opposed the war at the time.
But Tanya, can I just make this point? You say these issues should have been debated in the Parliament. They were.
Yes, they were.
They were.
And
you participated in that debate. So did I participate in the debate in the Senate. So the suggestion that Parliament was not given the opportunity to debate the issue is quite
George,
wrong.
Can I just, the final thing I'd say is the most recent action in Iraq that Labor supports, we support for different reasons, because we are supporting a democratically elected government protect its own people and territory from a group that is, beyond evil. But we still say, even though we support this action at this time, that it should be debated in the Parliament. We should have a proper discussion in the Australian Parliament about what our long-term objectives are. How will we judge whether we've achieved them? What about the Iraqi government as it is? Is it behaving properly? Can we be sure that the militias that are on the ground there aren't going beyond what they should be doing?
We've got another. I'm going to bring the rest of the panel to